Arriving in Venice on a bright April morning, coffee in hand, taking in that familiar sight of gondolas slicing through canals. You step off the train, heart swelling as you cross the Rialto. Then you see a sign. Day trippers must pay €10 between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. on selective days. No ticket? A €50 to €300 fine awaits. That's exactly what happened, says Euronews, that thousands of visitors in 2025 when Venice doubled the days having an entry fee for day tourists. What was once open, free, romantic has become regulated, taxed, and in some ways wary of outsiders. If that story makes you wonder, is Europe getting less friendly to American travelers? You're not alone. Over the past year, mood shifts, policy changes, and public sentiment across several European countries suggest that the warm welcome Americans once expected is cooling fast. In this video, we'll walk through where the shift is strongest: France, Spain, Italy, Germany, the UK, Greece, Scandinavia. What's driving it, and what it means if you plan to travel in 2025. Stick around because some of these stories may surprise you. France, a waning trust. France has always been America's star attraction in Europe: art, cuisine, fashion, romance. But in 2025, French public opinion has turned sharply, particularly in how people view the United States as a political ally. A poll by Elabe for BFM TV in March 2025 revealed that 73% of French citizens no longer regard the US as an ally. Only about 26 to 27% still see the US that way. What does this mean for American travelers? It's not about hostility so much as distance. Visitors say they're more cautious in conversations, avoiding political topics. Flags, symbols, even T-shirts with US references are worn less conspicuously. There's a sense Americans are seen not merely as visitors, but symbols of contentious US foreign policy, from the Ukraine war to tariff disputes. France isn't banning Americans, but the warmth in small moments, in cafes, museums, local markets, is under pressure. Many locals voice fatigue with global politics spilling into tourism, and some believe US cultural influence and behavior, noise-tipping expectations, display of wealth, tourist manners exacerbate the tension. Spain, the backlash out in the open. In Spain, the friction is louder, literally and visually. It's where slogans on walls, water guns used playfully but pointedly, and civic unrest intersect with policy. In June 2025, protests against overtourism erupted in Barcelona, Mallorca, and other Spanish destinations. Thousands of locals marched, some wearing water pistols. The messages were clear: rising rents, displacement of residents, loss of character. Your Airbnb was my home. Mass tourism kills the city. Tourists go home. These protests are not just about Americans, but many visitors are cast as part of the problem: loud, seen, spending, partying. According to an article by App News, Spain in 2024 hosted a record-breaking 94 million international tourists, many of whom came from the US, and Americans often spend more per person than many other nationalities. Authorities have responded. Rental regulations strengthened, short-term housing licenses being revoked, fines for noise and behavior rising. In places like Barcelona, the aim is to restore balance between tourists and local life. But for American tourists accustomed to being welcomed with open arms, the shift feels abrupt. Italy. Gates closing for day trippers. Italy's changes in tourist regulation are among the most concrete, especially in Venice. Venice introduced a day tripper access fee initially of €5 for certain peak days. By 2025, the fee doubles to €10 for those making last-minute entries, and enforcement includes fines from €50 to €300 for those who enter without proper ticket or QR pass. This applies only on specific days and hours. Overnight guests are exempt. Entry control points have been established outside Venice's historic center. Even larger cruise ships face restrictions in many parts of the lagoon, and big groups and noisy tours are under tighter supervision. The message is clear: the free-for-all of past decades is over. Elsewhere in Italy, local municipalities in Florence and Rome are enforcing fines for climbing on monuments, eating in restricted zones, or disrupting historic sites. Common behaviors previously overlooked are now punished more strictly. Americans often feature in press coverage when such rules are broken, perhaps because they're more visible in tours, large groups, or non-local style expectations. Germany, UK, Greece, political chill, and capacity caps. In Germany, the shift is less about entry fees and more about perception. According to multiple polls, including a large survey by Pew in mid-2025, many Germans see the US as less of a trusted ally. While exact figures fluctuate, the trend shows a decline in favorable views, often tied to US foreign policy, trade tensions, climate policy, and the Ukraine war. Conversation in cities like Berlin or Munich, locals and servers or shopkeepers may steer away from openly pro-American statements. US tourists report awkward silences. The expectation of admiration or default friendliness is fading into something more cautious. Over in the UK, post-Brexit immigration and travel rule changes have made entry or stay a bit more complex. Electronic travel authorizations are being phased in. Even cultural friction matters. Expectations around tipping, service styles, or portion sizes can cause misunderstandings. While the UK still remains one of America's more friendly European destinations, many travelers say the warmth isn't what it used to be. Greece provides a different but sharp example. Islands like Santorini and Mykonos are capping how many cruise ships can dock per day. Archaeological sites are considering stricter ticketing to regulate visitor flow. Local resentment over housing costs and public service strain is rising. The paradise tax is no longer just a tourist trope. It's policy in many of these island communities. Broader European sentiment and why it's changing. What ties all these cases together is a shift in how Europeans view America, and how much tourism is interwoven with geopolitics, local sustainability, and quality of life. A recent survey by the European Council on Foreign Relations, 2025, showed that in 11 EU countries plus UK, Switzerland, Ukraine, a large share now sees the US more as a necessary partner rather than a trusted ally. In many of the traditionally pro-American countries, that shift is huge. There are several triggers: political tensions abroad, US foreign policy under recent administrations on Ukraine, trade, NATO, emissions, has left European publics uncertain, less forgiving. Over-tourism fatigue. Residents in tourist meccas feel overwhelmed. More crowds, higher rents, environmental strain. Americans often seen as high-visibility travelers, cruise ships, big groups, short stays, which means they get more attention in both protests and regulation. Economic pressures and inequality. Tourism that was once seen as a boon is now viewed as a double-edged sword. Short-term rentals pushing locals out, service jobs undervalued, infrastructure stressed. Cultural expectations. Some behaviors tourists bring are clashing with local norms. Expectations around tipping, consumption, noise. These become symbols in the narrative. So where does this leave American travelers heading to Europe in 2025? Europe is not closed to Americans. Most countries remain open, welcoming, and value the tourism dollars. But the dynamics have shifted. The default has changed, from being a universally celebrated guest to being a visitor who must navigate politics, regulations, and local sentiment more carefully. If you are traveling now, here are a few advice points. Do your homework. Before booking, check whether your destination has entry fees for day tourists, restrictions on rentals, peak day rules. Venice is a good example. €5 or €10 entry on certain days, fines for non-compliance, travel off-peak and stay longer. Locals respond better to longer stays, less crowding. If you spend more nights, the cost per day tends to drop and you often avoid the worst restrictions. Respect local norms. Dress, tipping, behavior, modesty in certain places, noise control. Avoid behavior that may be perceived as privilege flaunting. Being aware and humble helps. Engage locally. Use smaller accommodations, support local businesses, avoid the large cruise ship traps. It helps not only financially, but socially. You'll be welcomed better. Be mindful of political conversation. Not hiding your views, but recognizing that many locals may be frustrated with US foreign policy, and bringing up politics uninvited may create tension. The broader truth is that tourism is a two-way street. As Europe reshapes its tourism industry for sustainability, local livability, and political sovereignty, tourists too must adapt. In 2025, something subtle but powerful is happening. The red carpet for Americans isn't being rolled up completely, but it's being fringed. The signs are not always obvious. It's a raised fee, a public poll, a protest, a local sigh. But stitch them together and the pattern is clear. Do you believe Europe is being unfair to US tourists? Or is this change a long overdue correction to overtourism and imbalanced cultural exchange? Let me know in the comments below. If this story struck you, please give a thumbs up, share, and subscribe so more travelers can stay informed. Because when the welcome feels different, knowing the why matters.